All right, so on the website, this is where the videos are on the morality in science. And then once you look through the impact of the Tuskegee experiments on higher education, the apology, and the Syphilis laboratory in Guatemala, then you can go back and click on the worksheet. And this is the Syphilis worksheet, and this is where I will get my questions. So if you fill out this worksheet while watching the video, there's nothing that is not on the, that will be questioned that's not on the worksheet. And then the same thing if you go to the video on the two on eugenics, and they are scientific race, war on the weak is number 1, and eugenics movement is number 2. And the question for that one is morality in science worksheet number 2. Then lab practical 1, which should be around the 6th week of school. This is lots of questions on it, and if you look through them, you will see the ones from introductory notes, but there's not a lot on those. And again, she's going to remind me where to tell you more questions on introductory notes. Remember how to get an A in my microbiology class. Who can remember? Number 1. All right, let's go over it. How to get an A in microbiology, my way that I've discovered that works for me. Remember, you could be twisted sick in some other way, learn things differently than me, and be a defective person. This is about me. But the way I've learned to make an A in a science class is the number 1 thing that correlates most highly with an A in a science class is perfect attendance. Number 2 high correlation thing is making an A in another science class, having some experience in science. All right, so number 1, perfect attendance. And of course, you can't be sleeping during the attendance. You have to actually be paying attention and asking questions. Number 2 is based on my degree in educational psychology and my dyslexia and what happened to me. And one of the things that I learned is Piaget's the prepared learner principle. And this is a principle of education which it says that if there's a difficult thing, a difficult concept for you to learn, and you come into class cold and you have never seen it, never thought about it, you just were assigned it and you showed up, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand in class, and it's going to be almost impossible for you to remember. However, there is a shortcut that is a knowing that will work, and that is anytime I tell you something that's assigned, go home and pick up the book and read it lightly. Read a couple of pages, read 20 minutes, at the most 30. Every time you finish a couple of paragraphs, ask yourself, did I understand the English of what they were trying to communicate? Don't try to memorize. Don't try to organize it. Just ask yourself, did I understand what this reading told me? If you didn't, go back and look up what you didn't. But if you did, keep going. After 20 minutes, get up, feed the dog, walk the cat, or walk the dog and feed the cat. Change the baby, slap your husband, do something for about 10 minutes. Then go back and do another 20 or 30 minutes until you get the assignment done. Then open up the PowerPoint notes and lightly read through them. Don't read through them like you're reading, some recipe that's not going to stick. Just read through them for understanding again, but not try to learn anything. Print them out, come to class, and then in class pay close attention to everything I say and everything that I go over. The least little question, stop me then. I am not one of those teachers that says, don't stop me while I'm lecturing, or ask me at the end of class. Ask me when you don't understand. I will rephrase it in a different way and try to explain it to you again. Do not be shy. Do not be embarrassed. There are 4 other people that didn't understand. They're just cowards. So you ask. Don't have a bit of problems. You're here to learn, and we're to be efficient. If you still don't understand the second time I explain it, I'll try a 3rd time. If the 3rd time you don't get it, I will say, please see me at the end of class or email me, or we got to talk about this. After class, go home, and by the way, during class, you're just not going to write down every word I say. You're going to take notes in the PowerPoint margins that you printed out. Go home, review it lightly. If there's something you don't understand, try to look it up. If you don't, put yourself a note to either email me or ask me in the next class. It will stick. You have seen it before you got here. Once I explain it, once you get here and you try to think about it, it will stick. It's amazing how this works. Then, every weekend or so, get together with a study group. 3 other people, no more. Get my old test, divide them up. Each of you take 25, look up the answers in the notes of the book, write down the page number where you found the answer. Why? Some people live off of other people, and they just write random, A, 2B, C, D. And then they hand that to you, and you find out it's garbage while you went and looked up your 25. So that's why I say write down the page numbers or the day of the notes where you found something. Then talk about the questions. I do not ever, hardly ever, give the same questions again, but I give the same idea. I always twist the questions so if you memorize them, you miss it. Memorize my practice questions. Memorization is not learning. If you go over in a group, and last term's question was, what is the mass atomic weight of a proton and its charge, then you would say, well, he wants us to know the parts, the mass atomic weights, and the charges of the 3 parts of the atom. Then you'll know, because the next time I'm going to ask neutron or electron. So that's how to do it. Once you go over the old test questions, what if the whole group disagrees about one? Then the answer is go on to Google Plus at any time and type the whole question, plus the answers, plus what you think the answer is. And I will tell you whether you're right or wrong, and if you're wrong, I'll tell you why. Practice the essay. Email it to me. I will tell you if it's right or wrong, what you can do to improve it. Then come in, be calm, take the test. Remember all those little test-taking things? Rush through the test with the ones you know really well. Answer them. Go back to the ones you weren't sure of, and usually it's the first thing that comes to your mind. If there's an essay, always do the essay first. You have reviewed it and it's fresh. But remember, lots of times the essay answers are in the multiple choice. So if you forget a point, look through your multiple choice. You probably wanted to know what systematic was, and it wasn't that. It was the scientific method. And there's a multiple choice question on it. Then when you get your paper back, you will get a copy of your paper. I will post online the questions. Look up the ones you missed. 1, I always have a typo, or 2, I always have 1 or 2 misgrades. Find them, everybody gets them. But remember, what's the final exam? The most missed questions all the way through the term. So if you look up the ones you missed, you're ready for the final. That's how to get an A in the class. But remember, when you're reading, look at the vocabulary list. If you know the vocabulary, you've got a C. If you know the concepts, you've got a B+. So how are you going to get an A? Answer, do the bonus. The bonus adds up to almost 7% in this class. 3% is the class bonus, and remember, every test has a bonus on it. So you can actually make an 83 in the class, and if you've done the bonus, you're going to get an A. So that's the secret to get an A in the class. So do that, and let's continue on this. Then how to properly wash a slide. there's the reasons and how to do it, and then when you click on that, the video on how to do it. Preparation of a smear. You already did the card. You can check the card by clicking on that little one in the list of PowerPoints. When you click on here, it shows you how to wash a slide. Then it's preparation of a smear from Auger and the video on it. And then at the bottom of that, I put another one where I actually filmed making a smear from Auger and then gram staining it, so you can see it. Remember that once you make a smear, it should be just barely clear. It's a good smear. These are too heavy. Remember that the purpose of a smear is to attach bacteria to a slide because they are colorless and they need colorizing or staining. You want to attach them gently to the slide so they do not destroy their structure. A side benefit, but not a purpose, of a smear is that it kills the bacteria. But we always act as if bacteria are deadly, so that's not a purpose. Remember to get yourself a little fan like this. It'll cut the drying time half. Here's my 19 steps that you're to condense into 10 or less with as few words as possible of how to make a smear from Auger. Here's the steps on how to make a smear from broth. Here's the biggest sin in microbiology. And what is it? Chunking the Auger, and you will go to micro hell. Okay? Here is my short list of my card for making a smear from Auger. And you can see that. So that's the smear prep. Then there's one on the negative stain. And there's a little thing right here that shows you how to make a negative stain. And we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. The simple stain, there's only a few steps, 6 steps, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. And then after that, the major stains, gram, endospore, and acid fast is each there, where it tells you about the theory and shows you how to do it. Focusing the microscope, we'll get into that a little bit tonight, and there's a little video on me doing it, and then there's a long set of things that tell you how to do it and some of the problems with it, common errors and so forth. Then there is the Lab Practical 1 exam. Remember, that's 20% of your grade, and the Lab Practical 1 exam will be about the 5th or 6th week, and it has 3 parts. 1, come in and take 200 multiple choice questions on all of this. Washing the slide, preparation of a smear from Auger, preparation of a smear from broth, simple stain, negative stain, acid fast, endospore, gram stain, the chapter on the microscope. That's it. That's all the stuff that's in Lab Practical 1. So you're going to take a multiple choice, 200 questions on that. You're going to have a little over 2 hours. Then you're going to turn in your Scantron, and I'm going to hand you a number 2. You're going to have already brought to class 10 washed slides. You're going to take that number 2 and get the bacteria off and make 10 smears. You're going to air dry heat fix them. You're going to hand me the tube back. If you're a chunker, you're going to be thrown out. I do. I throw them out. If you chunk the Auger, you're thrown out. What do you do if you're thrown out? You get to come on Friday or Saturday, and me and you will take the Lab Practical together. I'll be going. Don't you think that's too much? Why'd you do that? It'll be really annoying. All right? So, when you get your 10 smears done, then I'll say this table does gram, that table does acid fast, that table does endospore, the back table does gram first, so that not all the stains are in one spot. And you'll just pick one of your smears and do the stain, and focus it, and if you don't like it, you'll set it aside, and you'll take another one, and you'll do your stain, and you'll focus it, and if you like it, you'll raise your hand. I'll come and I'll say, what number was your tube? Because I'll know what it is. And you'll say, it's tube number 21. And I'll say, what stain did you do? And you'll say, it's gram. And I'll say, is it positive or negative? And you'll say, it's purple. which means it's positive, which means it has a thick cell wall. And I'll say, is it a rod or a cocci? And you'll say it's completely round, so it's a cocci. I will look through the microscope. You will have it focused. It will have a perfect white background with a nice bright purple cocci. I will give you 100% on it, and I'll say, do whichever one you want next. And you may do the acid fast next. And when you get that done, you'll do the endoscope. By that time, it'll be 30 minutes to the end of class. Everybody will get it done. I'll say, okay, now everybody's finished with the practical portion. We are now going to talk about, and I'm going to show you pictures of difficult to read stains. And you will have studied stain theory and which ones are difficult and why they're difficult right here. Then you will have taken sort of a test on it. You will click on Name the Stain Game, and you will go over each of these, and then you will click on Answers to Name the Stain Game, and you'll find out what the right answers are and why. You will have practiced. Then what I will do is I will give you a laser picture of stains that we did in class, because you will be taking little photos with your iPhones and Androids and emailing them to me. And you will tell me what the stain is, whether it's positive or negative, and if it's a rod or toxic. You won't be telling me what the name of the microbe is. There's 100,000 rods. So how do you practice that? You practice by coming into the practice session, and also by going to this thing online and double-clicking on the picture, and I will have discussed what that is, so that you can practice any picture that you think and might be confused on. Here it is, already online, hundreds of pictures of slides where you can get the right answer and practice. So this is practice for the third part of the exam. Part 1, multiple choice. Part 2, the 3 stains, you do them, I grade them. Part 3, I put problem pictures up, and you tell me, what's the name of the stain, is it positive or negative, and is it a rod or a cocci? And you will have practiced it using that. So, this is how to do the cards, rules for how to do the cards, and this is the list of the procedure cards that we're doing. And remember, we're doing smears and stains right now. And then finally, remember that all of the cards we will have done and turned in 2 weeks before the midterm, which is about the 10th week of school. And you will get a grade of, which is about 2% of the class grade, for doing the bonus cards, which is your lab manual. And then the midterm itself, 50% of it is understanding the cards, knowing the chemistry behind each one of the tests, the cards. And one of my students said, why don't I just make up a spreadsheet? And so they did, and I call it the cheat sheet. So here's a cheat sheet on all the cards, and it tells you the information. And a lot of people carried it around and studied it, and it's very helpful. It's also helpful in actually making the cards. So all of this is on the website, and then these kinds of questions that I'm going to ask you are called rhetorical questions. Anybody remember know what rhetorical questions are? They're not just questions that are asked to the atmosphere. Back when we were a very poor young country, education in the boonies was in a one-room schoolhouse with a teacher that taught 4 grades at once. And there were no books. There was just basically a blackboard and chalk. And so the teacher would go through the lecture and read, and then they would have oral give and return, which is what we will be practicing. I'll say to you, what's the most important step in making a smear? And you will say, washing the slide. And I'll say, what's the most common error in making a smear? And you will say, not washing the slide. And I'll say, what's the second most common error in making a smear? And you will say, making it too thick. And I'll say, what's the greatest sin in microbiology? And you will say, Auger chunking. And I'll say, which of our smears concentrates the bacteria? And you will say, the broth. And which of our smears dilutes the bacteria? Auger. And what's the last step in making a smear? You fix. And what's the second to last? Air dry. And so these things, these little rhetorical things, will be made into very simple, simplistic multiple choice questions for the lab practical and for the test that's coming up. So you'll have lots and lots of time and ideas of what to expect. Okay, any questions about this stuff that I just went over before we do the cards that were assigned for today? Okay, so the cards that were assigned for today were the negative capsular stain and the simple stain. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to see it was about 7-minute long video on how to do the negative stain and a little bit about focusing the microscope where I will give you a blood smear and you will focus it. So we're going to do that. Then we'll discuss the negative stain, the theory behind it. Then we'll move to the simple stain, and it will be only a few minutes. This is very quick. And again, if you have any question, be sure and ask.
People, do you know nothing about how to retire properly? It's so ridiculous.
You know, cut, so that's why, and the faster you make the paste, the quicker it will be washed. And then you rinse it and make sure you get all the soap off. And how you test it is you hold it under there, and if it withdraws like this, shrinks like wax, water on a wax car, it is dirty. If it's dirty, you've got to wash it again. And it usually does take 2 times to get it good and clean. And once you rinse it, after you rinse it good, and still withdrawing. So I'm going to have to do it a 3rd time. But probably not. You do not need to talk while I'm talking. Sorry about that. I yelled at them. There, better sheeting off. Still not terrific, but better. And then dry it well. And where you're going to put your circle this time is you're going to put it, again, a little bit, on the regular slide, you're going to be putting it a little bit past halfway. This one, you're going to put it about 3/4 of the way down. And where do you put the circle? On the bottom. And shouldn't have a blue Sharpie, but I've got a blue one. You've got to use black because some of our stains are blue. And you'll be using your wooden block as sort of a place to put everything. After you put the circle on the bottom side of the slide a little bit down, you're going to get one of these wooden dowels that we put through the autoclave, gather it by the middle, hold it by the middle, and then grit your teeth and go between tooth and gum. Don't get gum. That's epithelial cells. Just get the white plaque, I don't know, but, and then smear it, turn the stick over and over and smear it on the slide. Then add a drop of nitrosin dye. It should be in front. Remember, hold it by the glass because these tops disintegrate with the stains. Put 1 drop on top of the circle, and with your stick, mix it with the tartar. Then break the stick and quickly grab the second slide and sneak up behind the drop. So you're going to sneak up behind the drop, and as soon as you touch the drop, it's going to spread over the whole slide. Then you're going to lower the slide and pull. And if you get stripes like that, that's good. If you get all black, light won't go through it. So we don't want it to look uniformly black. Now, when you focus it, you're going to try to focus on your little circle, but if it's too dark there, just move to the side where it's lighter. And remember, it's got to be quite a bit lighter for you focus under 10H to turn it to 100. It's going to get blacker. So you're going to let this air dry. While you're letting it air dry, you're going to do the focusing. So let's review the focusing. You are going to get your microscope out and carry it over, and you're going to first thing check this little button here, the round wheel, and make sure it's back all the way to you, clicked off. Then you plug it in, and then you turn the power 90%. Then you bring the condenser up and open the iris diaphragm almost fully. The stage will be down, and you will put your slide, the slide that you already put a drop of oil on, you will put it in the slide holder. It's a hook like this. You're going to slide it in there. If you put it on the edge, you will shoot the slide across the room. So you have to slide it into the cutout. Alright? Then you're going to use these stage control knobs beneath the stage on the left side. And you're going to orient the slot colored portion of the circle that you want to look at directly over the condenser light. Make sure it's not pushing up through the slide, the condenser light, just almost touching. And you're going to click the 10X into place, and you're going to bring the stage with the course adjustment all the way up. You're then going to set the width for your narrow head. You're going to open it all the way. You're going to put your eyes 1.5 inches back, and you're going to see two circles. You're going to bring them equally together at the same time until you see one circle. And then you're going to write down that number so you always know what your width is. Then you're going to look through here with your glasses off and the stage all the way up, and you're going to turn the big knob until you see something flash. In this case, it will be pink because our stain is red. And you will see something that looks like pink sand. If you see one of the white blood cells and you'd like to see what they look like, just put them at the end of the pointer. Anything you're looking at should be at the end of the pointer, completely fine-tuned, and then you're going to take the nosepiece ring and take it to the left and swing the oil objective into place and listen to it click. Last, we're going to fine-tune under oil, and once it's fine-tuned under oil, then you raise your hand and I'll sign it. Then the next person, I'm going to mess it up and the other partner will fix it. What if you get here at 100 and you can't get it focused with the fine-tuning? Go back to 10. Make sure 10 is perfectly focused. Fine, put what you want at the end, and swing the oil objective into place, and then turn only the little knob until you get the fine-tuning into place. And usually it will only take you a little bit. So what do I want from you today? I want you to make the negative stain and let it air dry. While it's air drying, I want you to focus a blood smear from this box. Then, when you both got it focused, one of you is going to put your oil on your little drop and focus your tooth smear, your negative stain, and I'm going to sign it. You can do your drawing whenever you want. Then I'll sign the other person's. And if you do get a good one and you want some points to improve any pop quiz score, email it to HicksMicro@gmail.com, and I add up points and give that to pop quizzes. So Send 5, add 5 points to your pop quiz score that comes up. Anyone have questions? Yeah?
So, what do we do with the dirty one? We just lay it on the thing?
Yeah, you just lay it and later on you wash it and take it home and clean it.
And how long does it take to dry the,
Usually 10
negative
minutes,
red?
like we did this a long time ago and it's still not dry. So you can see it's shiny still, so it's not dry.
I gotcha.
And you don't use a cover slip, you put the oil directly on the slide after the dye has dried.
For every single stain that we're using,
Okay, so that was the little video on the negative stain. Now let's go and talk about the negative stain here. So, anyone ever notice that it says negative stain question mark? Why?
It's not a stain.
It's not a stain, because a stain is when you color bacteria. And the bacteria are not being stained in this case because the bacteria, the ones that attach themselves to your teeth, are covered with a sugar. They have evolved a way to continue to live on us. And they have a sugar candy shell, hard shell called a capsule, or they have a sugar candy disorganized structure called a slime layer, both of which are used to glue to our teeth. Now, it's no problem that they're glued to our teeth. The problem becomes when they eat food, they poop out an acid that eats a hole in our enamel of our teeth, and we call that dental decay, a cavity, or caries. So, remember, the bacteria is, I actually had a person that raised their hand and said, if I never brushed my teeth, would I lose weight? Because they're trying to eat the calories. No. No matter how thick your plaque is, you're not going to significantly lose weight. Ooh. Anyway, so remember this, the bacterial capsule is made of sugar, and sugar is very hard to stain. So instead of trying to stain the capsule or the slime layer, we just stain the background of the slide, and they show through as hazy or clear. And you can see some pictures here where the bacteria are actually, there's a round one, and there's a long one, these are rods. So the slide is what's staining, and since that is not what we normally do, that's negative, so it's a negative stain. And it really should just be called a negative procedure, but we misname it a stain. So if I ever ask you which of our stains isn't a stain, it's the negative stain. And the reason is because we don't stain the bacteria, which are colorless, we stain the slide and let the colorless bacteria show through. And what is it that doesn't stain? A hard candy shell called a capsule, that's a polysaccharide sugar, and slime bacteria that excrete a disorganized sugar attachment called a slime layer. Another nasty thing about capsules and slime layers is that your immune system doesn't respond to them. And so it not only attaches themselves to your teeth and produce an acid that causes damage to you, but they hide from your human immune system because they have a sugar coating. If your body reacted to sugars, it would react to your food. So this is one of the 3 things that we're going to talk about in Chapter 4 that increase the danger or pathogenicity of microbes. 1, capsule, sugar, hides from the immune system and glues itself. 2, a slime layer, also made of sugar, used for attachment and allows it to hide from the immune system. And then a third structure that some bacteria have, particularly gonorrhea, is a hollow tube that allows them to glue themselves to surfaces, and this is called a fimbride. And we're just going to mention it now because it's an additional structure that bacteria have evolved to enable them to stick to areas and colonize the areas And when they do that, they often cause trouble. And the most famous one is gonorrhea. Most of the microbes that you deal with, and viruses and bacteria, have a huge, what we call MID. MID stands for minimum infectious dose. And all bacteria and all viruses have a minimum infectious dose. And it is usually huge. Like if I had an HIV-1 particle and dropped it on his arm, he wouldn't get infected. It takes over 250,000 HIV particles, and it has to get to a host cell, so it'd have to be in a cut to infect a person. Of course, we get hysterical because we're Americans and we believe that one will do it. That's not true. Not one of anything will do that. But most things, like E. coli, somewhere around 200,000. Diphtheria is a little bit less, it's around 50,000. But the one organism that has one of the least is gonorrhea. 8,000 is all it takes to cause an infection and overwhelm your immune system. And you think, well, that's terrible, but it's not really that awful, is it? Actually, yes, it is. Because when you get exposed to gonorrhea, let's say you went on spring break and you just went and got completely blitzoid and you were doing shots off somebody's belly button all night long, and you wake up the next day and you find there are 5 naked people in your bed and only 2 condoms on the floor, and you realize something terrible may have happened. And within about 12 to 48 hours, you're getting this little burn during urination that soon turns into fire every time you try to urinate, and it becomes so painful you can't deal with it. And of course, you do not go to your local doctor. He'll tell your mother. You go to the county STD clinic, and they treat you, and you are cured. Within a few days, you can get a shot or you can take oral antibiotics. And you're cured, and then you find the one. You know, the one. And you date, and everything's going well, and a year later, you know, you finally, even though you used to put out at the drop of a hat, you wait a whole year, and it's just perfect, and you have sex, and they call you up 3 days later and says, I've got gonorrhea. And I haven't been with anybody but you in over a year. Yes, it was you. One of the things that's most annoying about gonorrhea is that you can get it with very few microbes, and you can cure it, and you can still carry it for up to 2 years with enough in your reproductive tract to infect another person. So even though you're cured and don't have any more of it, you can pass it to someone up to 2 years later. Why? Fembri. Just a few of them. Within 1,000th of a second, they attach. Remember, I don't know if you got nobody gives the talk, the birds and the bees talk anymore. They just show you some porn on Google and I've done my job kind of thing. But we had, in my family, the talk. It was horribly embarrassing. I was 12, and I think my sister was something like 9, and my parents argued over it for weeks, and finally my mother said, on Sunday after church we're having the talk. Your father and I are going to have the birds and the bees talk with you. And we kind of had already heard about things, and we were humiliated beyond belief. And so after dinner my mother said, okay, everyone come into the living room and sit down. Your father is going to give you the birds and the bees talk. And then she left. She said, I've done my part, now you do yours. And my father goes through all these things that your parents usually do. You know, you're not supposed, babies do not come from storks. This is the procedure, how it happens, and this is called sex, and it can be a lot of fun, but you're not supposed to do this with anyone that you don't love and have a commitment to and are already married, and we want to see the marriage certificate. But there are times where people will get you drunk and other things and convince you to do it. And if they do, you'll probably get a disease that will rot your body apart. You'll get these huge blisters and your thingy will fall off and all these things. But if by chance that doesn't happen, one of the things you can use that might protect you, but we really don't trust it, here's a condom and here, and he grabbed out a cucumber and some lubricant, and we were humiliated while he showed us how to put a condom on. And my sister and I are going, oh God, when is this ever going to be over? And then he ends up and he says, but there are some times where you either forget to have a condom or you only have one or it breaks or something. What are you going to do? Or you wake up and you've done it and there is no condom. And he says, if this happens, of course you're in danger of getting pregnant or getting someone pregnant, and you're also extremely in danger of disease. And there is only one thing you can do, and you must do it immediately, and that is urinate. As strongly and as quickly and as immediately as you can. You will usually blow the microbes out, and urine is acid, and microbes don't like acidity. He said, of course, that's with the exception of gonorrhea, because it attaches in less than 100th or 1,000th of a second. And you will know within 48 hours if you've got it. And of course, you know, after this thing, my sister and I were never interested in sex for years afterward. It was so horrendous. But the point of the whole thing is that urinating after an act that might have infected you or so forth does blow out most microbes, but it doesn't blow out gonorrhea because of fimbriae, the attachment. And remember that fimbriae, slime layer, and capsules are evolutionary adaptations of bacteria to colonize humans and make the microbe more pathogenic or more dangerous. And you should be able to explain what that means. Okay, so this negative stain is about, there is another variation of it. After you do the first portion, you can also stain it with crystal violet or methylene blue, and you will see the little microbe inside the capsule. But we usually just do this one. It's quite adequate for us to see it. And if you recall, here's what you do, and you can do this in two orders. You can get the clean slide and put the circle up at one end, and you can take the sterile wooden dowel and go between the teeth and the gum. Don't get the gum because we don't want gum cells. We don't want you bleeding, although the bacteria will glue themselves to gum cells as well. And you take it and you smear it on the circle and you add 1 drop of nigricin, and then you mix the two together, and then you take another slide that can be dirty and you sneak up behind that, lower the slide and pull and let it air dry. Now, lots of procedures tell you to put a drop of nigricin first and then mix the stuff from your teeth with it. I find it tends to stick to the slide better if you put the tartar from your teeth first and then mix it with the dye and spread it. And remember, you want to start focusing down where you put the circle, but remember you're going to need to move to the edge of it because it's going to be too dark where you put the drop of dye. You're going to have to spread it out and let it dry. Remember, when you begin focusing under 10x, you may see these things like this, these zigzaggy lines. They are cracks. They're nothing else but cracks. You need to move over to where it's lighter and try to focus on something there, and then once you turn the 100x into place, you should be able to see the shadowy microbes. Remember, if it's too dark, as you're going from 10 to 100, you are reducing the amount of light by 100%. So it's going to get very, very dark, and so you're going to have to look at the lighter edges. And remember, you put the oil on the slide as soon as you dry it. As soon as it's dry, you put the drop of oil on. Then you put it on the microscope. Lots of instructors have told you to go ahead and focus under 10x and then put the oil on. totally illogical. If you have done all this fine tuning to get something fine tuned under 10x, why would you knock it out of focus trying to get a drop on the slide of oil? Why not just put the drop of oil on the slide first, focus under 10x, and then swing the 100x into place, which is the way we do it. Some teachers do try to get you to focus under 40x first, and then swing into 100x. I don't, because you can jam the objective through the slide and break it under 40x. But if you put the slide on the 10x and click it, there's no way you can bring it high enough to break the slide. So you can't make a mistake the way I teach it. So let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you about the capsule stain. Oh, did you know that other animals get tartar and get dental decay? And did you know that you can pay $300 and get your dog a shot, and your dog will never have tartar, never have yellow teeth, and never have dental decay? The veterinarians have done more research than the medical doctors for dogs, and so dogs can get a vaccine so they never get dental decay, but people can't. Do you think the American Dental Association wants us to have a vaccine?
Oh.
I don't think so.
Well, they have one for humans, but there's so many different types of bacteria in the mouth that, like, I don't know, it doesn't work very well. There's,
Yeah,
like,
it's not
Yeah.
adequate. And it's funny that the one in dogs does work well, so I'm wondering, you know, how hard they're working on it. But anyway, I'd like to show you some of the things, some of the pictures from this, so you can see some of my students are absolutely nasty. And some of you will be, and I can't wait to see you. Whenever I look through these things, I always make a point to bring up, oh my God, look at this nasty mouth. Everybody come over here and look at this. This is one of the worst nasty mouths I've ever seen. So, this is a nice nasty mouth. This is another one. Notice this one, they have gouged their cheek. See the octagonal shaped epithelial cell? It's a little bit folded, but you can see the bacteria do glue themselves to it. Let's see, oh, here's one of the better ones. Look how filthy this girl was. Ew. Would you want to be doing the snake thing with her? Dentists and microbiologists despise the snake thing. That's the snake. So you can see, it's not very hard. Ooh, that's a nice one. Oh, I clicked on the wrong one. There we go. Isn't that a nice one? What a nice picture and a nice negative stain. So that's what you'll see. Not bad, huh? Kind of interesting. Lie to me. Say, ooh, that's fabulous. Man, that is some cool stuff. All right, great. I agree. All right, so now we're going, any questions at all about the negative stain? Remember, it's negative, called the negative stain because we're coloring the slide and not the microbe, and there are other kinds of negative stains, and this is also can be called a capsule stain because in this case, when we take it from the teeth, we are staining capsules and slime layers. Questions at all? Yeah?
So when you focus on the 10, then you put the oil, then you go to 100?
No, you put the oil on first, focus under 10, then swing the oil into place, and then only fine tune. Very important.
So from
Never
10 to
touch
100?
the coarse focus or the big focus knob when you're under 100.
So from 10 to 100 then, oil first, 10, focus under 10 and 100.
Right. Go directly to 100 from the 10. Once it's focused under 10. Now remember, if you want to see something that you see under 10 and you want to see it under 100, you have to take it to the center at the end of the pointer. Because when you go from a 10 to 100, you're reducing your field of view by a tremendous amount. So only what you have in the center will show up. And of course it'll be dark. All right, let's do the simple stain.
I have
And the simple stain is called a simple stain because it is
Simple.
simple. Yeah.
Sorry, really quick, when we do our procedure cards for our lab manual, will we be using, that example of taking the, sample from our mouth instead of doing the one where we take it from like a broth or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll be taking it from one of us. We're gonna see how nasty you are. All right, so this is called a simple stain, and it's called a simple stain because there's only one color involved. And we're going to briefly introduce a little bit about the gram stain because it's the first of the important stains. It's the most important, and it's a differential stain. So I'd like to tell you what the difference between a simple stain and a differential stain is right now. So listen and then write, okay? All right, so a simple stain has one color and can only give you a limited amount of information. You can see the microbe. What do you see under a simple stain? Size and shape. That's it. Now a differential stain gives you a tremendous amount of information. And there are 4 characteristics to a differential stain. Number 1, a differential stain tells you some chemistry about the microbe. It tells you chemistry. Number 2, a differential stain uses 2 colors. Always has 2 colors. So number 1, it tells you chemistry. Number 2, there's always 2 colors. Number 3, differential stains divide all bacteria into at least 2 categories. The category where they kept the first color you put on is said to be positive. And if they keep the second color you put on, it's said to be negative. So differential stains are said to be either positive or negative if they put on 2 colors. If it keeps the first color, it's positive. If it keeps the second color, it's negative. And, oh my God, his mind goes blank. The 4th characteristic of a differential stain, he forgot. I think it was what I did. It divides all bacteria into groupings. But I kind of mixed it up. All right, so when we're talking about the gram stain, for instance, let's give it as an example. It's our first differential stain. And you're going to put, the first thing you put on is called a primary stain, and it's crystal violet. What color do you think it is? Violet, purple. And then you're going to wash it off and rinse it off, and then you're going to put a pink stain called saffron on. And then you're not going to remove the saffron, you're just going to shake it off and get off the excess. All right, so the chemistry behind this gram stain is the thickness of the cell wall. And the cell wall is not really a wall, it looks like a chain link fence. And all bacteria basically come in 2 kinds. They either have 100 layers of chain link fence, or they have 2. So if you put a big molecule behind 100 layers, is it going to be easy to remove or hard? Very hard to remove. So if you put purple on a gram positive that has 100 layers of crisscross wire, basically, and then you try to remove it in 2 seconds. Each second removes it from 1 layer. What's it going to look like after you try to remove the crystal violet? Remember, it was clear. You put crystal violet on, it seeped through 100 layers, then you shake off the excess and you try to remove it for 2 seconds, and every second will remove it from 1 layer. What color is it going to be after you try to remove it? Purple. It was clear. You put on 100 layers of purple. You try to remove it from 2. So that means you've got 98 layers of purple. So what color is it?
Purple.
Purple. Now, you then add the secondary stain or counter stain called saffron, which is pink. Now here's another sad thing. Hurts my feelings to tell you this, but you have been deprived. Yep. Ronald Reagan. You see, we once had Proposition 13. We had the first or second best high schools in the United States. We spent more money per pupil on education than almost any other state. We were ranked #1 or #2. We tried to beat out New York all the time. And then we had Proposition 13, and Ronald Reagan and that whole group came in, and they said, we don't need this money for education, and now we are around 28th. And what is the first thing they got rid of in high school? Art. Because they said, hey, you don't need art. That's for rich people to appreciate art and music. And so you didn't have art. Well, I had art, and one of the things, you don't realize it, but art gives you tremendous things that you use the rest of your life, and not just for beauty. Because in art, even in finger painting, you know that if you have purple and you add pink to it, you still got purple. But most of you don't have a clue. And you don't know how you get blue, green and yellow, and how you get purple, pink and blue. They don't know that. So when I tell students, if you put pink on purple, what color do you get? They don't know. And the answer is purple. So, with gram-positives, you have 100 layers, you put purple on, all 100 layers turn purple, you try to remove the purple for 2 seconds, and you have 98 layers of purple, and you put pink on purple and you don't try to remove it, you still got purple. So, thick bacteria with thick cell walls are purple. All right? Now, let's talk about bacteria with thin cell walls. They have 2 layers. You put on purple, and you let it soak through all 2 layers. Then you remove purple with the decolorizer for 2 seconds that removes it from 1 layer for each second. Then you put on pink, and you don't remove it. What color are gram-negative? Pink. They were colorless. You put on pink. They were colorless. You put on purple. You removed the purple because you only had 2 layers. And you removed it for 2 seconds. So it's now colorless again. And you put pink on colorless and you don't remove it. They're pink. So differential stains are stains that tell you something about the chemistry of the organism, in this case, the thickness of the cell wall. You learn that the crystal violet molecule is huge and the safranin molecule is small, and that the crystal violet is trapped beyond hundreds of layers. You learn that if it keeps the first stain you put on in a differential stain, it is positive, and if it keeps the second one, it's negative. And you learn that these differential stains separate all bacteria into groups based on this chemistry. Now, most people will now think that there are 2 groups to the gram stain. There are 4. Why? There are 42 genera of bacteria. 40 of them have cell walls, 2 don't. So if you don't have a cell wall, can you stain it? If you don't have lips, can you put on lipstick? So there are 40 genera of bacteria that have a gram stain result, and 2 that don't have cell walls, so they have no gram stain. And then there's 1 type of bacteria that has a thin cell wall, but has like a 15-foot fat layer around it. And it's called gram variable because of the fat layer. Now, does anybody know anything about stains? This is a sexist, misogynistic statement I'm going to make. Girls probably know about staining clothes. A lot of guys don't know. I still have friends that throw them all together and turn it on warm. And that's why they get the pink undies and the pink socks and all of that. But they don't know a thing about stains or anything. Well, let me tell you something about stains. On this past Labor Day weekend, if you went and did the thing that everybody does,